I remember seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark as a child, and even then thinking that there may have been a little bit of truth in those Hollywood movies. And it's quite interesting because in the early 80s when that movie came out, the manuscript, the Gospel of Judas, was in the process of changing hands and being held by a private dealer. This book, published in 2006, was published only a few years after they had access for the very first time to the Gospel of Judas. So the whole story is very, very interesting. And it's really, some could say, an act of God or something higher that the manuscripts were even discovered. This includes the Nag Hammadi, the way they were discovered. And when you think about it, how do we know there aren't other manuscripts or sacred spiritual texts that are out there that modern digging methods aren't discovering because they're no longer digging by hand? And also, what about some of these museums that have been raided in some of these countries that have been occupied and attacked? Now, a lot of people know about Iraq, for example, in 2003 and what happened to one of their famous museums. People don't talk about it as much anymore. By the way, it is 2018, but they talked about it more then. So there could be things, by the way, today that are being hidden from us that have been discovered. So it could be said that we are living in the day and age of knowledge and secrets being revealed. And I think that it is an honor to be a part of that. And there's a lot of things that are revealed today in the day and age of information. So it's our responsibility to do something mindful with it. You know, I was talking with someone recently who I respect, but this person is like a lot of others in not understanding why it is that some of us do what we do and we don't enjoy the simple pleasures in life, the simple relationships in life, the simple jobs in life. And that's not really something that's easy for me to explain to him, you, or someone else, but it is. It is what it is. And I don't think that's about one person having all the answers, certainly not one YouTuber, right? But there is like a process of awakening, and it's the act of speaking and communicating truth. And there's something that's unique to human beings that possess human consciousness and the types of ideas that we're able to communicate. So I'm personally not interested in idle chatter and idle gossip and much of the news of the day. At the moment, I'm interested in the ultimate of ultimates of going outside the box. So that's where we'll start. Now, with that, let's begin reading. And we are on page 100. So instead of just go through the stated gospel, which we can go into, we're going through a really brief overview, summary understanding. So you understand the belief systems of this sacred text from 1600 years ago, at least, that was only recently discovered. And as you listen to this, as you receive this knowledge, as you receive this information, as this is read to you, feel free in your own imagination, instead of me interrupting every minute. But it's good to break it up and go back and forth. Imagine for yourself, understand for yourself the world today and how this may apply. A good portion of the surviving gospel contains the secret revelation that Jesus delivered to Judas alone. It reveals a great and boundless eternal realm, the realm of the truly divine beings beyond this realm and far above the inferior deities who created this material existence and humans. The revelation will strike many modern readers as complex and difficult to understand, but its basic thrust is clear. Numerous superior divine beings came into existence long before the gods of this world appeared. The gods of this world include El, the word for God in the Old Testament, his helper Nebro, also called Yaldabaoth, who was defiled with blood, whose name means rebel, and another Saklas, a word that means fool. Thus, the deities in charge of this world are the Old Testament God, a bloody rebel and a fool. This is not a ringing endorsement of the world's creators. Saklas the fool is said to be the one who creates humans after his own image, which leads Judas to question, is it possible for humans to transcend life in this world? As we will see later, the answer is a qualified yes. Some humans have an element of the divine within. They will survive to transcend this world, to enter into the divine realm far above the bloodthirsty, foolish creator gods, above and beyond. Judas himself is the first to do so. We're told near the end of the text that he has his wish fulfilled. He enters into the luminous cloud, which represents in this text the world of the true God and his aeons. Like everything else, like everyone else, Judas has a guiding star, his superior star to all the others. His star leads the way. It leads to his proper understanding of all that Jesus has taught him. Salvation does not come by worshiping the God of this world or accepting his creation. It comes by denying this world and rejecting the body that binds us to it. This is the ultimate reason why the deed that Judas performed for Judas is a righteous act, one that earns him the right to surpass all the others. The author writes, by handing Jesus, over to the authorities, Judas allows Jesus to escape his own mortal flesh to return to his eternal home. So again, for those that haven't seen part 1 and part 2, it's a different spin on what happened and why. It's part of Jesus saying, okay, sir, coming after me? Well, guess what? I'm immortal, y'all. Go ahead and make it happen. We'll see what's up. Something like that. But it's the idea that it wasn't flesh and blood. It's a different type of a Jesus, much more supernatural in description. And some people may not understand. When I grabbed this book, there was a young girl, and she was kind of like looking at me, looking at the book, looking at me like, maybe a little bit, because immediately someone not knowing, like, so you're Judas? So you're against Jesus? It's like, not quite. In fact, the book, which I found by accident, again, I found it by accident. I was returned the Nagamati to a library which is very small in size. The amount of books at that library, very orthodox and mainline. So books like this, some books you'll find, for example, you'll find David Icke books, for example, at a Portland library. You won't find, for example, David Icke or other conspiracy books at small rural conservative town libraries like this one. So even though this doesn't get into some of those ideas, I definitely think this is outside the box. And so when I saw it as a sign, and I saw it as a synchronicity, and I sat down literally at the library, which I don't do often, read a few pages first, and I felt the truth. And I felt the value and a reason that I had picked it up. And I've had this experience with other books. So that's why I'm taking the extra time to go through this book before I return it in multiple parts, digesting it piece by piece, comparing some of these spiritual understandings, potentially deeper truths that we may currently realize, comparing them to maybe truths that we may have come to realize ourselves about this fallen world and the lower state of the body and the desires, the ego, everything. Fear of death. We look at the way they try to program us, right? Via the media owned by the God of this world. It starts to make a lot more sense, especially when you look at where they're trying to take this world. By the way, hey, how about that gene editing in China? Another video. We'll have to come back next week and start tackling more current affairs. So, okay. We have already noted some of the key theological themes of this gospel. The creator of this world is not the one true God. The world is an evil place to be escaped. I'm just thinking, my whole story of escaping Portland, it was really just, and what's playing out here in the physical is just a reflection of beyond. as we have been asking ourselves the ultimate questions, have we not? What are we doing here on this planet? Why are we here? Why are we coming across amazing knowledge? What do we do with this? What do we do with this? Well, I'll tell you one thing. We do something with it. And there's power in wisdom, but it's not our job to impress the people of this world. Convincing someone, well, this is why we're interested in truth. This is why we place value on this. Let's just do our work and keep moving. This world will try to tempt us and trick us back into ego, right? But we can understand with our higher mind the trappings of that. You know, some people could really desire a lot of money, but that can be really corrupting in ways that some people don't think through. Sometimes it's through the simple way. Living simply with hardly any dollars in your pocket and dedicating one's life, way of life, to speaking truth and not adding in a bunch of booze, not adding in a bunch of trips, although I would like to travel. There's reasons why I am not animated or pleasured by certain material things. I've experienced certain things in this world, didn't really mean to take this detour. I've fallen down certain traps. I had to learn, I chose to learn certain mistakes early on at 18 or 19. Why? Why so young? It seems like there was a part of myself that was destined to create its own micro troubles early on. So by the time I was in my mid-20s, my seeking was going even deeper, and then I was aligned with this path of truth speaking. We're starting my own cable access TV show. Now off the grid on 1 acre, speaking primarily on YouTube, but thinking about the future and possible expansions. But it's beyond words to try to explain to someone why I do what I do, why it has also a certain level of intensity and seriousness, because this is no child's play. Okay, this is the ultimate. If you see something, say something, but on the spiritual note. So some of us, some humans that are alive today, maybe more than you may know, maybe some of you, may have a level of born knowledge, who knows why, regarding the unseen realms and how they influence our world. So I have embarked on a path of sharing my truth over a period of a good several years. Although on YouTube, there's content that goes back to 2006, but I started in 2004 in Portland, and it would be years before things became a little bit more overtly, hey, this is spiritual warfare. But it was always a part of what it was that I spoke of in the grand scheme of things. Although there were many periods in which it seemed that the main focus was covering the news and the current steps to war or the next level of the domestic surveillance society. And even though that could be also really taxing on the body to cover that stuff all day long, but I think there's value in it in reaching a certain level of knowledge and awareness regarding it. But there's a deeper level of wisdom that we have to attain beyond the conspiracy, and to go even deeper and even beyond the fear of, we could really be asleep at the wheel with regards to propaganda, because so much is designed to frighten us away from our path, and we have to resist that. We have to continue speaking the truth. So for me, it is aligning with the truth regarding the spiritual war on the bodies of man and woman, and articulating the ways in which I see it. And so the way that I look at things spiritually, psychologically, if there's something that I'm picking up on with regards to the control structure, then I'm going to speak about that. Now, if there are others that are going to go in other paths with their understanding of how humanity is under control, they have my blessings. Some people, however, they have been misled by others and the talking points of others, and they do not realize that their thoughts are not their own. So it's not my job, in my mind, to save them. And I don't think with my old mind, Alex answering back in Portland 10 years ago, right, that the world needs to wake up or else. Even then, I was a little bit suspicious of that. But it was really popular for the world to speak like that. I think that it's more obvious now than ever that the world is sleepwalking into the next event. And so ultimately, I don't think that the souls here today in human form are victims, right? That the earth and the circumstances right now provides a lot of room for growth, for people to wake up to their own truth and the greater truth and resist the slavery mindset. There's a lot of ways in which people haven't done that. There's a lot of ways in which people are still in master-slave relationships in their own lives. And so the truth really is within, but so is the responsibility with regards to changing the world. You know, I believe in sharing one's truth, right? But not forcing that truth down people's throat, for example. So I do think that there is a certain level of destiny, right, that certain humans or people may have to embark on a great work or truth and to speak about that. And it may not be, right, destined for someone to do the same thing or speak of the same thing forever. There is a time and a place. So this is the truth that comes to me with regards to this, and also why we do what we do during certain epochs or cycles. So there may be a time and a certain level of awakening to speak about the physical grid and surveillance and war, and a time to also go beyond the physical with regards to what's taking place, especially when we're talking about the nature of the dark side, and especially when we're talking about the nature of the true change that needs to take place. Is it a political change, or is it a transformation of the soul beyond even certain burning desires and obsessions? And I would say it is the latter. And I've always felt that since I was a child, right? Certain things have happened in my life that have made this truth a little bit more obvious. But, you know, without going on a super longer rant, there's certain times, like when I had to live with my father for those few years, between 15 and 18, where sometimes were so lonely and challenging that I did go within into a state of meditation because it was the only thing that I had at that moment in which I felt that I was in a bad situation, where things were really uncomfortable and emotional. And there was something instinctual and intuitive within myself that knew that the answer and the peace and the strength was within, and creating a field of energy, if you will, around my body. So I do remember that moment, and I was in Springfield, Virginia, and the year was 1995 at the tail end, massive solar or snowstorm, rather. And that was a difficult time, being away from Oregon and whatnot. So the point of this is there may be certain things that happen to us within our lifetimes or the lifetimes themselves that send us in a certain direction to where we seek our own answers, to where we are our own rescuer. There are also situations that have been documented, of course, where a mother or a female may be strong enough to lift a vehicle up above, lifted up where it may be crushing her child, or you've heard of situations like this, where someone, and also think about a man as well who may need to protect his family, can conjure up enough strength to do seemingly the unthinkable. So these things are possible, and many other miracles are possible. We have already noted some of the key theological themes of this gospel. The creation of this world is not the one true God. The world is an evil place to be escaped. Christ is not the Son of the Creator. Salvation comes not through the death and resurrection of Jesus, but through the revelation of sacred knowledge that he provides. These themes stand diametrically opposed to the theological views that eventually triumphed in the early Christian debates concerning proper belief, that is to say, in the theological wars of the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Consider the opening of one of the most famous of these creeds. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. This affirmation stands in contrast with the views set forth in the Gospel of Judas. Okay, so what I just read to you is like the Old Testament worldview, understanding of the Creator. Whereas in the Gospel of Judas, there's not just one God, but many gods, where the Creator of this world is not the true God, but a inferior deity who is not the Father of all, and is certainly not Almighty. We are now in a position to examine more closely some of the key teachings of this gospel, its views about God, the world, Christ, salvation and the other apostles who stand behind the creed that came to be accepted as authoritative, yet who never do understand the truth. The view of God in the gospel. At the outset of the gospel, it is clear that the God of Jesus is not the creator God of the Jews. In one of the opening scenes, Jesus finds the disciples gathered together in pious observation. Literally, the Coptic says the disciples were engaged in practices with respect to God. They were sharing a meal in which they were thanking God for their food. One would expect Jesus to respect this act, but instead he begins to laugh. The disciples, so this is at the beginning, by the way, of the gospel. They don't see what's funny. They say, "Why are you laughing at our prayer of thanksgiving? We have done what is right." Jesus replies that they don't know what they are really doing. By giving thanks for their food, they are praising their God, not the God of Jesus, which caused confusion and caused a bit of anger. Jesus responds that no one of their generation will know who he really is, which is, again, interesting, being that there are certain truths that I think are obvious and others may see are obvious in this world, but the masses, the vox populi of this generation, they don't get it. But can we envision a future generation that's not so personally involved in their own egos? Maybe in the future, looking scientifically at what happened here, do you think that they may see some of the more obvious truths that this current generation didn't get? Probably. So we can probably imagine where he was coming from. Pretty clear cut there. The disciples did not take too kindly to this rebuke. Not too surprising. And start getting angry and raging and committing blasphemy against him in their hearts. Jesus proceeds to upbraid them and speaks again about your God who is within you. At play here are several key themes which repeat throughout the narrative. The disciples of Jesus do not know who he really is. They worship a God who is not Jesus' Father. They don't understand the truth about God. Judas, the only one who truly understands, declares that Jesus has come from the immortal realm of Barbelo. That is, from the realm of the true, immortal, divine beings, not from the lower realm of the creator God of the Jews. This understanding of the creator God as an inferior deity is most clearly stated in the myth that Jesus expounds privately to Judas later in the text. I'm going to skim forward. Even before the creator God came into being, there were enormous numbers of other divine beings, 72 aeons, each with a luminary and each with 5 firmaments of the heavens. So I think there is numerology that we can glean from this in other texts. 72. Well, what's 72 times 2? That's 144. Is 144 symbolic biblically? 144,000? The answer is yes. So 72 aeons, numerologically speaking, and I'm not doing charts here and man, those videos, I don't know how some of these people come up with all that stuff. They like go on for hours with all this math and I don't know, man, maybe they really are gifted, but I think that there is some sort of a mathematical code that's there that means something. It means something. I don't know what it all means. There's a lot of interpretation, including some really wacky beliefs that certain numbers are evil or combinations. I think it's a little bit more complex than that. And symbols and numbers can be used and perceived in different ways. So I wanted to note that. Also, it says a total of 360 firmaments, which is interesting. We have 365 days per year. Also, countless angels worshiping each one. So moreover, and we have a little bit of a light issue here. So we will be back with part 4.